This is the Cole Memo. I am your host, Cole Preston. Every episode is released in audio, video, and transcript format. To find the transcript, audio, or video version of any episode, please refer to the description of the episode that you're listening to now. Within that description, you can find a link that will take you to our website, which will display the transcript for this episode and the platforms where you can find this episode in audio or video formats. If you're unable to locate the episode description on whichever platform you're listening from, simply note the episode number and visit thecolememo.com. Find the corresponding episode, and you will then be able to access the audio, video, and transcripts. You might also find any links that we reference during the episode so that you might be able to do your own research. If you're not listening to this episode of the Cole Memo on Patreon, then you're listening to this episode later than our patrons. To become a patron, go to thecolememo.com/Patreon. Once again, that's thecolememo.com/Patreon. It's a great way to support our show. One of the best ways to support our show is free. Leave us a positive review from wherever you're listening to us from. Favorite this episode, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, or post a review. Your engagement and support is appreciated. Enjoy this episode of The Cole Memo. Today's episode was released on October 24th, 2023, and it looks like I filmed it on October 10th, 2023. Enjoy the episode. Well, Masha, I'm so excited to have you officially join me on the Cole Memo. It was cool. I was reminding myself where we met in Denver at Jane West's party. I think we were enjoying, as I like to say, enjoying the fresh air. In other words, I think we might have been sharing a joint. But
yes.
Nice to meet you. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell our audience where we can find you online and such?
Yep. So my name is Masha Ty, and I am currently in Florida. I work with ACS Laboratory. I do we call corporate growth and education. That's our form of marketing. We really are more about education than marketing. ACS Laboratory is one of the biggest cannabis and hemp testing laboratories in the country. We're a 20,000 square foot facility located outside of Tampa, Florida. We are ISO accredited, DEA licensed. We are CLIA licensed, which means we can do human trials. We can test blood, saliva, urine, those kind of things for, they're called pharmacokinetic studies. So bioavailability, basically. So what makes us unique is we can test the plants, but then we can also test metabolites from the human body. So, which is amazing for any kind of in-depth studies or things like that brands could do to look at the efficacy and the bioavailability of their products. I speak at conferences mostly on psychedelics these days. That's all everybody wants to hear about. I'm on Twitter _Masha T. That's MASHATY. And same with Facebook and LinkedIn. And then ACSLab.com. You can find on Instagram. Sorry, did I say Twitter? I meant to _Masha T. Twitter or X, whatever it is now.
Yeah.
I think I'm still the Masha Club. Yeah. So,
well,
yeah,
cool.
That's where you can find me.
Cool. And yeah, like you said, ACSLab.com. I was displaying it there earlier. It's really cool to see that you're a DEA registered laboratory. I thought that was cool.
Yes.
So yeah, I just wrote down too. I definitely want to talk about the idea of metabolites in the body. I didn't realize you could test for things like that. I'm just curious though to start off, and I'm struggling to find the clip right now. If I find it here in a second, I'll play it. But maybe I think this will ease us into a conversation about everything. The Florida cannabis market, which is where you mentioned you are. What's that like?
Well, what's it like? The Florida cannabis market is an interesting market. So it is a medical market. We have, I think, close to 900,000 patients at this point, which makes us probably one of the biggest medical states in the country. There is no home grow. There's no, adult use, I think, is going to be on the ballot. Everybody is expecting some progress with that. We are governed by the Department of Health, the Florida Department of Health. So that's the governing body. And it is a vertical market, which means that a license, and they're called MMTC, Medical Marijuana Treatment Centers. They're called MMTCs.
Mm.
So brands like, I'm sure you've heard of True Leaf, which is a national brand, Cookies, Vitacan, some others, Sunburn. So there's some that are MSOs, that like Grow Healthy, that are across the country, and then there's a few like the Flowery that are just within Florida. And sorry, Vitacan is within Florida. But so what's interesting is that the way that the Florida market is structured is that, so a vertical license means that you own the entire supply chain. So you've got to cultivate. You're the cultivator, the processor, the extractor, and the retailer, and also delivery. So all of those licenses it's like a super license. They play within one brand. So what happens is right now we have 21 of those in Florida, 21 MMTCs, and we have an application process that just closed. So there was a bunch of applicants. I think there were like 72 or 73 applicants for the new process. And we're not sure when the decision will be made, but I think they're awarding like 21 new licenses. What makes it unique is that there is not a limit for the amount of dispensaries that an MMTC could have. So we've got, True Leaf, I think, which is the top with about 127 dispensaries across the state. And then you have some others that are starting out that have 3 or 4. I think Move, which is owned by Verano, is I think they have like 70 stores. So there's a gamut, between sort of the footprint that these brands have.
Yeah.
Being a medical state, we have interesting rules when it comes to packaging. So the packaging is sort of very bland. It's got to look very medical. So it's all white with just one color logo.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain things, that are restricted. And so I think that creates a level of creativity. And as we know, you can't advertise, cannabis, you can't really advertise except to your database. And being a laboratory, even though we don't technically touch the plant, we're not plant touching. We basically, we test cannabis. We also test hemp and mushrooms and kratom. But when it comes to cannabis, what we test it for, and those rules are, again, the governing body, which is the Florida Department of Health, has created these rules for testing. So the plants are tested for potency, so, THC potency and 11 cannabinoids. So THC, CBD, CBG, like the 11 of the major cannabinoids. And then we also test for terpenes, which are not required, but obviously are a differentiator. What's required by the state is potency, and then pesticides, heavy metals, residual solvents for extracts, and then microbiology, filth and foreign material, there's water activity, and there's, I think there's one other thing that I'm forgetting. But so it's basically to test the purity of the product. So we tested like medicine.
Gotcha. Yeah. And the clip that I was looking for, which I just am not able to find right now, and I know that the moment we get off the phone call, I'll find it. But your governor, who is not exactly pro cannabis, I was surprised to see him describe the market as an oligopoly.
Interesting.
which I can't find right now. I swear it was him. And like I say, being anti-cannabis, I was surprised to see him describe it that way. And then what you just described is, yeah, it sounds like it's, so there's a limited number of licenses, but the licensees have no limits, really.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, so okay, so we kind of segued to testing, which is exactly how I thought we'd naturally transition. Before I moved to testing, though, any other thoughts on that? I didn't mean to just transition after I brought up Governor DeSantis' description of the.
So the other thing I wanted to note about testing, so you'll hear I may throw out the term COA.
Yeah.
So that's the certificate of analysis, COA for short. So that is the test result. So when the product is tested, the result is called a COA, the certificate of analysis, and that shows all the different levels. It shows the it shows the potency levels. It shows the fact that all the products were tested for. Florida has very strict guidelines. We test for 67 pesticides. We test for 21 residual solvents. And so all the states have different guidelines, which is what makes it so challenging. And that's when people talk about that there's no standardization in testing, that's what they mean. Massachusetts has different guidelines than Colorado, than Florida. So it's tricky.
Yeah.
But the COA itself is what tells the patient how they're going to feel and that it's a clean product. And then we have a QR code that's produced that can go on the package for the patient, to review those results.
Yeah. And thank you, by the way, for making sure people understood what COA is. We try to recommend people that if you're going to purchase products, be sure to ask the person that's, vending those products, for lack of better words, for a certificate of analysis or for a COA. It's good to know what you're consuming. And on that note, you were mentioning everything you test. So you say 11 cannabinoids, terpenes. That's within the cannabis plant. I don't know if you mentioned psychedelics earlier, so I don't know if you want to segue to that just yet, but I figure since we're talking about testing of drugs, it's applicable, right?
Sure. So we do have a DEA license, which means that we can test, we can accept scheduled substances from other DEA licensed labs or research facilities, right? So that's a practice so there's a special form that gets filled out. Everything gets registered with the DEA, and then they're able to send us samples in the mail. Whereas with cannabis, we have, control. And they go and they pick up the samples and then they drive them back to the lab. So that's, a little bit of a difference there with the DEA products. So we've been testing a lot of mushrooms that are being used right now for research. And believe it or not, it's easier to receive samples from Jamaica for mushrooms than it is from anywhere in the US, because it's legal in Jamaica. And so in Jamaica, they don't need a DEA license. They just need to be able to export the samples out. And other countries, they're, depending on the country, and they're all different. Many of them, they're not illegal, so they can just send them to us. But we still have to file a permit with the DEA to receive them. So everything is like super tracked, and we have to be very careful, which gives it, there's a lot of paperwork. And even those, like, there's no like seed to sale tracking system. It's all paper trail right now. There's not a chain of custody that's, there is an informal chain of custody, but that's why I'm so excited about what we're doing with the blockchain. We've recently partnered with Blockticity to put 36,000 COAs on the blockchain. for our hemp clients. Not yet for cannabis. We'll be doing that next, but we wanted to do a proof of concept, and that's really, really exciting. We work with Ava Labs. It's Avalanche. It's their blockchain, but it basically says that this is the test. These are the test results that are indisputable, and they're put on the blockchain. And there's so much potential there to track everything about the product, including genetics, how it tests, how it moves through the supply chain. It's just, the potential is huge, and I am excited about that.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to interject. Remember, it sounds like you're about to segue with mushrooms, but I just wanted to quickly commend you on that. It sounds awesome because I know there's a lot of like outrage right now surrounding hemp, and the fact that it sounds like you're making access to COAs easier is a good thing because it kind of takes the air out of anybody's argument against hemp if it's tested and such, right?
Exactly, because when we produce the COA, at the end of the day, it's a PDF, right? It's a PDF file. So all these different brands that can upload the PDF to their website, like they could be tampered, they could be, there's a lot of funky things that are going on. But if you have a third party blockchain, which is really nothing more than just a website in a different sense, the way that it's, what the user experience is, it lets you know that that's indisputable and that it's authentic. Now, so back to the segue back to mushrooms is that what's so interesting about mushrooms is that mushrooms, I mean, there's over 400 compounds in magic mushrooms, right? And so what I'm seeing is like just how in cannabis, we're so focused on the THC. In mushrooms, everybody's really focused on the psilocybin, but it's really just one tryptamine. So you've got psilocybin, psilocin, biosystin, norbiosystin, and on and on and on. There's so many of them, and we know so little right now because it's been very underground. A lot of labs, won't share that information. Hyphy Labs, I have so much respect for Reggie Harris and the things that he's done over in Oakland and Triptomics, some of these other labs that have been not only testing, but publishing their results in studies. They published a big study where actually at the psychedelic conference where we met. So, with mushrooms, I feel like the more science that we share and the more information that we share, it really allows people to treat it like a medicine where they can know what to expect, because right now people take mushrooms and they're like, oh, how much do you take? Oh, you take a half a gram, you take a gram, you take a micro of what? It's like we just talk about it by weights. And it's kind of silly because there are over 180 species, golden teachers, penis envy, all kinds of different species. They have different potencies. They have different active tryptamines, and very much like cannabis, where there's different strains, all these different subspecies originated in different parts of the world. Some grew next to churches, and so they're more spiritual. And there's all these theories, and so I feel really honored to actually get to look at the data and have the science behind it and help people with precision dosing, help people, we're working with a group that they're going to be supplying the mushrooms for a huge study for cancer patients. Like that to me, you're stressed out at the end of the day and people are like, oh, you're not curing cancer, relax. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, like we might be, we might be curing cancer. So it's really exciting because it's just the beginning.
Yeah. And like you say, being able to gauge your experience is so important. And just like to your point, there are some times when I've taken mushrooms and it's what I would describe as the best feeling ever. And then there are some times where it's not the best feeling ever, but it's not exactly what I had before. And it's like, what did I do differently? And, if I had more information, I feel like I could make better decisions based off of that. Like in what world do you not make better decisions when you're presented with more information? Like hopefully in an ideal world, right? In an
Right.
ideal world, you make better decisions because you're presented with more information. And yeah, like you say, without that, which is largely how we're operating, it's hard to make informed decisions. And I know this might sound unrelated, but you know, one of the things that I've noticed is, so I had these cannabis beverages. They're actually hemp derived
Uh-huh.
THC
Right.
THC products, which are, completely legal in all states basically. And I was drinking one at a family event, and both my grandmother and my aunt asked me like, "Oh, what is that?" And they even took a sip out of it. Now, I would never be able to get them to take a
Right.
baby. I could never talk them into like, "Oh, just take a little hit, just take a little hit off this."
Right.
But with a drink, because it's like
Yes.
something they're so accustomed to, even if they don't necessarily if they're not necessarily familiar with the substance, they were comfortable enough to take like a sip. And so, like I
Yeah.
say, it doesn't exactly relate to what you're talking about, because what I was kind of just talking about is mode of consumption. But I would hope that with not only more information, but also different modes of consumption, that yeah, like people are able to make better decisions, decisions that make sense for them.
Absolutely. Well, and it's on that topic, like with mushrooms, just because they're illegal or not decriminalized doesn't mean that there's not like a huge industry and a huge
Right.
boom happening, right? So we know this. And they come in, there's gummies, there's chocolate, and there are different modes of consumption. And many times, and I don't know, I'm sure you've experienced this and our audience has experienced it, where you have a mushroom chocolate and you'll take a square and you won't feel anything. So like 30, 40 minutes later, you're like, oh, let me just take two more. And then all of a sudden you cannot move. And it's because it's not homogenized in the chocolate. So,
Right.
it's not evenly distributed. And it's the same thing with gummies. One gummy may work, one gummy may not. And so we have a long way to go, but we've also come really super far as figuring out extraction methods and the vehicle for delivery and stuff like that
Yeah.
with mushrooms.
And I just wanted to dwell on that just for a moment, and then I wanted to ask you about a few other things. But I just love that you made that point. The homogeneous mixture, folks. What we're dealing with right now are heterozygous mixtures. Am I
Right.
wrong? I mean,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So they're not even. In other words, I'm just totally pulling this out of my high school science education. Like I remember that they would show us like an even mixture for a homogeneous mixture, but then like they'd show us oil and water because it'd be separated, and they'd be like, see, this is heterozygous, it can't mix, right? And so yeah, I think that's important to know. And some comedians have even made jokes about it with regard to edibles, edibles versus Tylenol. It's like Tylenol is this uniform mixture, so if you like split it in half, you are splitting it in half, like to an extent, you know what I mean? You got to make sure you literally split it in half. But with cannabis and, like you say, even psilocybin, these mixtures are not homogeneous, or in other words, uniform. And that can be the root of a lot of these issues, I think. you
Yeah.
know
Yes.
what do you think is the answer, just to before we move on from that? Do you think there's some sort of, is it a combination of testing and technique, or like how do we solve that problem?
But yes, definitely. It's both. It's testing and technique. And, I think a lot of entrepreneurs fall in love with their own products,
Yeah.
right? So they get like really hooked on, but it's such a great product. And, you know, yeah, I mean, but you have to be willing to look at it objectively and to have many other people try it and get feedback. And there's going to be different versions, like we also test amanita mushrooms, and that's been, and amanita mushrooms, for those that have not heard of them, those are the red mushrooms with the white dots, Amanita muscaria. And so that's a mushroom that's been around for thousands of years. It's literally been hiding in plain sight. The Smurfs lived in those mushroom houses, and like that's the mushroom that Mario Brothers, he eats that mushroom and he grows giant, and Legend, yeah. Yeah, they're so cute. I love them. So Legend, and they really look like that. They don't even look real. And so legend has it that the Vikings ate them to feel like giants before they went into battle. I mean, so many cool legends. So the amanitas are legal, they're not scheduled. And their active ingredients are muscimol and muscarine libotanic acid. And they're different than psychedelic mushrooms because the psychedelic mushrooms, like psilocin, binds with your serotonin receptor in your brain. And your serotonin is like your happy messenger. Like if you are depleted in serotonin, that leads to depression and, loss of energy and other things. And so it's amazing because like the psilocin molecule looks exactly like the serotonin molecule. Well, for Amanita, their active ingredients bind with our GABA receptors. So the GABA receptors are what's responsible for sleep and, different things like, unfortunately, a lot of the drugs out on the market today, like, Xanax, Ambien, a lot of the sleeping pills, they're also meant to bind with our GABA receptors. And they kind of do, but your body doesn't fully go into theta when you're sleeping, so you don't really feel rested. And the amanitas are they're called deliriants. So they allow you to not only have the most restful sleep, but you also experience lucid dreaming, when you're sleeping. And it's a beautiful, incredible mushroom. And so the reason I'm talking about this is because people have been trying to figure out how to get to a good product with amanitas. So I've been working with clients on the R&D, and it's been tough because like the mushroom itself will test a certain way, and you can't eat the raw mushrooms. So I want to say that, like, if you see these beautiful mushrooms, don't pick it and eat it, because
And
you will get sick.
one thing you said just really quick too, I thought that was interesting. They only grow outdoors. I was like, what?
They do, which is really kind of cool, right? They only grow outdoors. Whereas with psilocybin containing mushrooms, we can mimic the environment and grow them indoors. And we've gotten really good at that now. But there's something about the amanita. It's their symbiosis with the ground, with wood, with the mycelium network. They really need to be connected in order to grow. And I think there are people that have tried to grow them indoors, and maybe I'm sure there's a way. We just, we haven't figured it out yet. But you have to dry them and decarboxylate them in order to remove the ibotanic acid, which is considered a neurotoxin. So you can have traces of it, but it can't, be present. But to get to a final product, like we're working with makers that could be testing the mushroom, the dried mushroom powder. It looks great. They test it, looks great. They put it into a gummy, super low potency. It does not show up, and we're trying to figure out why. Why are the gummies testing lower? And that's part of the, the product development roadmap. That's like my favorite, I think, part of what I do is working with entrepreneurs and brands to figure out how do you get to a better product. And how you get there is testing. You've got to, because the gummy could taste amazing. You could take 4 or 5 of them and then they do nothing. Why? I mean, so these are the things, that we need to figure out. The same thing in chocolate. I think it's a little bit different in chocolate. We kind of have a theory that the pectin and the sugar may reduce the potency of the muscimol, which is the active ingredient in amanita that everybody wants. But again, this is a legal mushroom. People are making products, and it's almost like the Delta 8 of the hemp industry. It's like that kind of legal backdoor that it's kind of the Wild West.
Yeah. I actually there's a hemp company in Illinois that I recently visited in Southern Illinois University that was selling hemp in the college, which was so cool because it's completely illegal and it's weird to see. Like he had like jars of weed of hemp,
Right. Right.
and but he also had a bag of like gummy Amanita muscaria mushrooms, and it didn't click to me what exactly he was talking about. I was like, wait a minute, that sounds familiar because we had talked.
Mhm.
But yeah, it wasn't ringing a bell. So like you say, I didn't even realize that it was like right in front of me, and
Mhm.
I will be looking out more because it sounds like you say, it's almost like the back door into the industry. And I do want to get to that topic. I wanted to talk to you about hemp, like the hemp and cannabis testing and
Yeah.
sort of Delta 8 and stuff. But just more on the topic of psychedelics. I'm curious, I'm sure that, well, I guess the DEA has been testing these compounds for, I don't know. Do you know the history on it? I guess what I was about to ask, sorry, I know I'm throwing a lot at you there.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to ask is, since we don't know anything, it's like when you run these tests sometimes, do you have to like create things? Do you get my question here where it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. It's a great question. So when we develop the method to test for something, we buy certified reference materials
mm,
from like a certified, so there's manufacturers that make reference materials. What does that mean? It means that you get the starting material. So I'll use psilocybin. So there is, we buy a sample of psilocybin that is certified, tested to be 100% psilocybin. And then you take that and then you develop a method along with the instrument. So we use LCMS, which is liquid chromatography mass spectrometry, to read the results. So you have a standard, so that's the 100%, and then everything that you test compares against that
mm,
standard, right?
mm,
And so that's how it works, except for the mushrooms are not 100% psilocybin, right? They're just
right,
tiny percent. So the certainty is in measuring the psilocybin and then the psilocin and then all the other tryptamines. It works the same way with cannabis. So we have the reference standards for THC, CBD, CBG, Delta 8, every single cannabinoid. We test for over 30 cannabinoids now. It's almost like it's you get dizzy thinking about how many cannabinoids there are.
right.
We don't know. We're just at the tip of the iceberg, right? There's over 180 cannabinoids. We only test for 30 of them, and then we think we're testing for a lot. And here, everyone's obsessed with THC. That's one. It's
Right.
just like one, And so it always makes me laugh when people just are so hooked on THC potency because it doesn't, like, sure, that's great, but you've got a whole football team. Are you only going to look at the quarterback?
Right.
No. So we
Yeah.
have lots. I mean, even as like mature as the cannabis industry we think it is, it really isn't
Yeah.
as far as science goes. There's still a lot more to learn.
Yeah, and thank you. That was the root of my question there. I was aware that, there's hundreds of cannabinoids, and I'm aware that from what you taught me today, there are multiple tryptamines and psilocybin. But yeah, I kind of was wondering like, so, okay, you just said you're testing for 30 in cannabis, but I just wondered like, yeah, if it's like you're ever looking at this and you're like, again, I don't know much about the process, but it's like you're looking at the lab paper, you're like, huh, what's this tryptamine? And then it's like you almost have like an opportunity to name it. Like I'm gonna name it Masha
No,
tryptamine.
no, it's not like that.
Okay.
When we develop a method, we already know what we're testing for.
Mm,
Um, so this is the goal. The goal is to be able to identify 100% of that material,
right.
right? Most mushrooms right now are only testing between 1% and 2% of psilocybin, and then a very small percentage of everything else. So like 96% of that mushroom we haven't quantified yet.
Yeah. Is it true that sorry for the very specific question. Is it true some people say that the caps are more potent than the stems? Have you ever done a test like that?
We have not yet, but I know that Oakland Hyphy did a test like that, and they published the results. I want to say last year they published it, and I think it was mixed. Like it was kind of like
Mm,
it varied, that it depends on the species, on the subspecies. And so sometimes yes for caps, sometimes yeah, it was varied. So I think that that is a myth. Um, I think when in Amanitas, yes, the caps absolutely from what I've been reading are more potent. But again, we need more data,
sure.
to really to know this. And again, the potency, if you're only looking at psilocybin, yeah, maybe the caps have more of that, but maybe the stems have something else that we don't know,
Right.
So
Right.
it's like this, and listen, I'm not a chemist, like I don't have a medical degree. I'm just, when I get obsessed with something, I get really curious and I find out everything that I can about it. And then I feel like my mission is to simplify things for people, to help them navigate and to make these complex concepts simple. And lab testing is kind of, it is complex. We have to explain to our clients all the time how to read, how to read the certificate of analysis. It's not that simple, and we sort of we've sort of taken it for granted, but I don't think a lot of people really understand what they're reading.
Yeah. I've got a really interesting question for you about like cannabinoids. You mentioned, what did you say? There's 180 cannabinoids, roughly, maybe there's more.
I
Maybe.
forget what the number is. It was either 118 or 180. I know
See,
there's a
I've
date
heard
note
of,
in there. I
yeah, I've
think,
heard around that number. Over
yeah,
100 is the point,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
for sure.
maybe even more.
Yeah.
So I would like to get back to that idea. I wrote it down. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about lab shopping. And I don't know, like, since you're a DEA lab, if you really even fall into that category, but
We
it's
do.
like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, my thing about it's like, it's when people describe third party testing, it makes it sound like it's like this unbiased source that you don't pick, but that's very much not true. And I'm not saying that anything
So,
bad is happening, but I'm just like, it is interesting. So like, what are your thoughts on that?
we're DEA registered, but we're still a third party independent laboratory,
Mm,
right? So our client is the brand or the MMTC. At the end of the day, those results, we're being contracted to test products and then report the results, right? We report them. We can't say, wow, your product, and especially if it's something like unregulated, like if it's just like an R&D test, if it's high in metals, we just report that to them. And then it's
sure.
up to them to do what they're going to do with it. Now, if it's a compliance test for cannabis and it fails, if it fails molds and mildew, or if it fails metals or solvents, we have to report that to the state. That's by law because we're also state certified. Now, if it's mushrooms or hemp, we don't have to report that to the state. For hemp, the only thing that's required is if it's over 0.3% THC,
Right.
and that only gets reported at harvest. So if you are making products, let's say you buy, some distillate and you believe the COA that you received from someone else that was selling it to you, or you buy, live rosin, whatever, you buy bulk stuff, right? And you believe the COA that someone gives you. I'm talking about hemp right
Hmm.
now. And you don't test it to verify it yourself, that's a huge mistake. So you should always test it yourself as well. So they would, send it to us. we test it, and let's say our results don't match the results that they got. Well, then they have to say, okay, who am I going to believe, right? Which lab am I going to believe? If that product tests hot, meaning like they tell me it's a hemp product and it's got 1% THC or whatever, I'm going to let the client know. I'm not going to report it to we're not the police,
Sure.
it's still,
Sure.
we're still working for them. Everything is still confidential, with the exception of what I just said, when it's a compliance test for cannabis for the state, in which case if they fail, metals or contaminants or anything like that, we do report that.
I guess what I was asking about, have you heard of like other labs, like I think in other states? I've never heard of it personally in Florida, but like I think in Colorado, I've heard of people shopping for labs that give them higher THC numbers. Yeah.
For sure. People do still shop for that,
And that's where I was saying it's like third party independent makes it sound like it's like you picked it out of a hat or something, but like that's not the case, is the point I'm making,
Well, we have the third party independent means like, okay, let's say you're making a product, right? And you did your own testing in-house. That's not an independent test. That's not a third party independent test, right?
Yep.
So, and many brands they do testing in-house, but then once they send it to us and it's third party verified, that gives it more credibility and more plausibility. And also commercially allows them to sell the product, it's funny, a lot of these Amanita products, like we've heard about them being taken off the shelves because they have psilocybin in them. So people are, making Amanita products and putting in some magic mushrooms in there because they can't really figure out how to get to a good product just doing Amanitas. And mushrooms are so cheap to grow. They're like, let me just throw that in there, because nobody's really testing for that, but we are, so we could do like a negative psilocybin test to say, this product does not contain any psilocybin. It is an Amanita product. Like it's compliant.
Yeah. And
yeah, interesting.
It is interesting. Is there any like equivalent to, so you just described with hemp, it's 0.3% THC.
Yeah.
It's not, I think it's with like psilocybin, for example, the number needs to be 0. Am I correct? Like for it to be legal, there's no like,
no.
But isn't that funny? That's kind of funny, isn't it? When you think about that, like we've made this distinction, this legal distinction where it's like there can be
decided that, yeah. Well, but also, hemp is governed by a different body, right? Hemp is the U.S. Department of Agriculture, right?
Right.
So with the hemp farm bill, when they passed the hemp farm bill, they said 0.3% THC, all parts of the plant.
Right.
So that kind of, now you've got Delta 8 products, HHC products, all these different derivatives, right, that people are making that are all legal. So that's why everybody's kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with the next hemp farm bill. And this is what makes hemp tricky, right? Even though it's nationally legal, it's still state to state is different.
Right.
Whereas cannabis is federally illegal, but legal state to state. So so there's different tax. It's a different tax code, and in fact, like in Florida, if you are an MMTC, if you're a medical marijuana treatment center, you cannot sell hemp in the store. That's a different license altogether. It's crazy, So we do have some cannabis brands that also make hemp products that they're not allowed to sell in their own dispensaries.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. We actually found recently, and I'll share it on the screen. It might be hard for you folks to see, so I hope you're able to zoom in. Unfortunately, I can't. But there's a menu here, and this is from an Illinois dispensary.
Okay.
This top one has 0.34% THC.
Okay.
But this bottom one has 0.01. This other one has 0.01. This one has 0.01, which means it's it's funny, it's hemp, right? Since it's
Right,
under 0.03.
right.
Or it could be, you could sell it legally as hemp. And so um, I think it's interesting. The THCA one,
Oh
that's
God,
the most
it's a
interesting
great
one to
one.
me, because that's basically what that flower was that I was just displaying. You would call it, if you wanted to sell it legally, you would call it THCA flower because it has
Right.
less than 0.03. That's an interesting one because it really just shows you just the arbitrary, the how arbitrary the law is, right?
Well, it's not that it was arbitrary. So remember that when the law was made, they just talked about THC, but
Sure.
the plant is THCA and
Right.
THC and CBDA and CBD and CBGA and CBG and all of that stuff. Everything is THCA until it's lit.
Right.
So it is all potentially THCA,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the way that so in Florida and in many other states, the way that it's reported is it's called total THC. So
Mm,
total THC equals THCA times
right.
0.8777 plus THC. So if your THCA is very high, your total THC will be high,
Mm,
but the THC can still be 0.3.
right.
So what they're saying is that the hemp farm bill doesn't say total THC. It says THC, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's nomenclature. I don't know. There's a lot of, heated debates about this right now.
Right. Yeah, we hosted one. It got really
Yeah,
heated.
and it's risky, and for us, we tell all of our clients, like, look, if this is what you're doing, if this is how you want to run your business, you should know. And again, we're not the police, right?
Sure.
But you should know this is how we report the results by law. That's how we have to report the results. So I think, brands that are doing this, who am I to judge?
Yeah. I mean, there are big brands that are doing it
There
now,
are
like
really big brands that are doing it
cookies,
and that
for
are shipping
example.
it,
Yeah,
right?
shipping it across the United
Shipping it
States.
across the country.
Um, I wanted to close off on a kind of a just closing out with that conversation. It's interesting, when I first was introduced to legal cannabis, one of the pitches my bud tender made to me is exactly, kind of what you've been drilling is it's not all about THC. And I remember I was so intrigued to be introduced to the world of legal cannabis because they had like a poster up and it showed like all of the cannabinoids and
Yeah.
like what they might do and could do. And I remember trying different cannabinoid based products. Like I tried Delta 8 for the first time in an Illinois dispensary, not in a gas station like most
Right.
people have for their first, it was
Yeah.
in an Illinois dispensary, a legitimate product. And, I've tried other, CBG, CBN. And I just remember it being all about like, hey, now we have access to this. We're embracing science and, we're not discriminating on cannabinoids anymore, right? We're embracing them all for what they can do. But lately, as you just alluded to, it's gotten really heated. And some people have this opinion that like Delta 8 is bad and certain cannabinoids are bad. How did we get here? Because I was looking at the poster enamored and in love with the fact that we have all this information and all these extra cannabinoids. And now people are like taking some and put these are good and these are bad, and it's
Well,
like,
I don't think it's not that they're bad, it's how they're manufactured,
mm,
right? So you've got Delta 8 from cannabis, and then you have Delta 8 from hemp. Now, which by the way, it's all cannabis, right? So let's just, yeah. So, so the cannabis plant has been genetically modified to only to be a low THC plant that we now call. The cannabis plant does have all of these different cannabinoids, including traces of Delta 8 and CBN when it's an older plant. That's more of like a degradation thing or an agent thing. It gets down to CBN. It starts with CBG, so CBG plants are like cut earlier. Everything, there's like a science to everything. Now, Delta 8 is really incredible. It works with both your CB1 and your CB2 receptors. And so you still get the lift, but you're kind of like not as confused. So it's great for pain, and it's great to go to sleep because you're not as, you don't wake up, or at least for me, I don't wake up in the morning as tired. But what's happened is, because Delta 8 does get you high, and because it is legal, it's created this loophole. And many people that can't get into cannabis, that are locked out of cannabis because, it's so expensive to get a license, and, there's just all these different barriers to entry. The barriers to entry in hemp are a lot lower. So there are people that are making Delta 8. Now, let's be clear. You can make Delta 8 in the lab instead of just extracting. You would not extract the plant to get Delta 8. That would be way too expensive. You'd have to go through way too much material. So you can take CBD and through a chemical conversion process, make it into Delta 8. So what happened? The CBD market kind of became oversaturated, and people were sitting on so much supply. When they found out about this way to make Delta 8, it was like, everybody jumped in, but not everybody is a good chemist, right? Especially when they owned a construction company last year. They're not a chemist. You know what I mean? Like, and, full respect for construction companies and all that, but now all of a sudden you've got everybody and their mother that all of a sudden is a manufacturer and is a chemist and is talking, compounds and this and that, and
Right.
And they're using materials, residual solvents, that are not even on the radar of regulations. Right?
Well, that's kind of scary. Yeah.
That is scary. So we can test for, and we do though, because Florida, we test for 21 solvents. It's pretty tough to get around that. Like if you can pass Florida solvents, it's pretty tough. But like ethanol, methanol, hexane, propane, there's like all these, there's a level of toxicity. You don't want any traces of that. So that's really where the danger is, I think, with Delta 8, is that it's, and there's a huge gamut. Like you have people that are just making amazing products in a GMP facility that are chemists that understand what they're doing, that take pride in what they're doing, and they care. They test, they do full panel testing, they do everything right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got these other guys, like in any industry, that are in it to make a quick buck, that are going to cut corners. They're not going to use good solvents, and probably they're going to rush to market, maybe not test, and there's going to be residuals left in there. So that's where you have the differences, and unfortunately, great products don't make the news. It's only like, some hospital worker ate 5 Delta 8 gummies that, just all this stuff, kids brought gummies to.
That's the one that's been rocking Illinois lately. Yeah. Oh, the kids got Delta 8, and
right, the kids got Delta 8 and all this stuff. So,
yeah,
and it is illegal, I believe, in 23 or 24 states now. So
that's my worry, and that's why I started this question. And I have a clip from somebody that might be able to put it better than me. It's a short clip because I know we're at the top of our time, but that's really the root of my question there. You led with saying exactly what I was concerned about, and I didn't even really know. Delta 8, apparently, you said it acts on like the CB1 or CB2 receptor in a really
both the CB1 and the CB2 receptors, which is really amazing.
And so my point, which I'm going to segue to this video because I feel like I'm going to butcher it. There are things that we can find out maybe down the line, and I'm worried that if we make it illegal, that we might not be able to find it out. Like maybe perhaps a cannabinoid that is able to interface with the CB1 and CB2 receptor is especially effective for a certain subtype of Parkinson's or something like that. And it's like,
absolutely,
that's where I get scared about. And I'm glad though that you addressed where maybe the legitimate concerns come from, because I just get worried about people on face value demonizing these
Yeah.
cannabinoids when it's like, even synthetic cannabinoids, like you said, sometimes Delta 8 can be purely synthetic. And I want to even talk, like, I know, again, we're short on time, but I even am referencing like K2 and stuff like that. I think that professionals could make that stuff, and there's potential that it could be helpful for certain diseases. And by making it just illegal.
So, back in the day when we were doing Molly, right, at clubs having the best time, it was medicine. And now look, MDMA is, through phase 3 trials, and
Yeah.
after years and years and years, it's going to be used for depression. Well, I knew that 20 years ago when I went to my first rave, so it's like there are things that you learn through trial and error that, had it just been stamped out, all this progress wouldn't have happened. So I don't think you should ban it. I think you should regulate it, make sure it's tested. That's it,
Yeah.
and the same thing for all of these, for mushrooms, for DMT, for mescaline, for LSD, all of that stuff. It just needs to be tested to make sure that you're getting a good product.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can have progress, that's, and
Well,
precision dosing. I'm going to just end with that, how important that is. Precision dosing, to know that you can get that same experience every time with cannabis, with mushrooms, with all of these. And the more that we understand, the more that we can quantify, and you can read a lab result and you're going to feel that way every time, just like a Tylenol.
Yeah, actually, yeah, well said. Thank you for returning to that. It's one of the first subjects we started off with. And for the audience, just because I want to be respectful of your time, Masha, I'll play the video after we did it. I actually think that in retrospect, I did just fine in describing it to you. It seemed like you were picking up what I was putting down. And so, well, any final words before I let you go? ACS Labs, what was the website again?
Yep, acslab.com. Cannabis in Florida, hemp, 50 states, 16 countries. And mushrooms, we test functional mushrooms too, not just amanitas, psilocybin from, with the DA permit. But, I'm here. We do a lot of blogging. If you go into our education on our website, if you go to the blog, that's what I do, is I get to, there's categories on all kinds of different, we talk about hemp, kratom, mushrooms, and we interview people, we do the research, we treat it like journalism. And education is key.
Yes.
There are no bad drugs, only bad people. No, I'm kidding. No, there's it's all medicine. It's been here, most of it, for thousands of years, and it's not going anywhere. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Anybody wants to email me, it's Mashty, MASHTY, at acslab.com. Happy to answer questions, love talking to entrepreneurs and answering any kind of product questions, testing questions. Yeah, I'm here for it.
Absolutely. And Masha, I feel like I have to play. It's only a minute long. I have to play this video because of what you just said, how you closed on there's no such thing as a bad drug. I agree. And that's actually how this video ends. So it kind of just caps off everything we just talked about. So I'm going to share it. So.
Okay.
Oh, there's a bunch of people in Brooklyn and they overdosed on some obscure synthetic cannabinoid, and if it gets thrown into Schedule 1, who cares? Not a big deal. Well, that's a very short-sighted way of thinking about all of this, because that's exactly what happened with psychedelics. And then we're not learning from the mistakes of the past, that just because something it's fun to sensationalize and talk about how dangerous it is at this moment doesn't mean that 10 years from now we're going to recognize that it has serious therapeutic potential and we made a mistake outlawing it. And I think a lot of that also comes from this sort of us versus them mentality that people have, where it's cannabis is good, synthetic cannabinoids are bad. Well, synthetic cannabinoids don't have to be bad for cannabis to be good. Cannabis can be good without something else being bad to counterbalance it. You don't need to hate something to justify your love of cannabis. And this whole hatred of synthetic cannabinoids, I think, is totally misdirected, because these are products of prohibition that most people wouldn't even want to use in the first place. And when they do use them, they don't know what they're taking, they don't know what dose they're consuming. And so of course they're having bad experiences. That would happen with almost any drug, caffeine included, if people just consumed enormous unmeasured doses without having any idea what they were getting into. And so they're thrown into Schedule 1. Well, what happens if 30 years from now, once the therapeutic potential of cannabinoids is being really seriously explored, turns out to activate a certain TB1 receptor that's especially useful for Parkinson's disease? Then we're going to regret having done that.
Yes. Love Hamilton.
Yeah.
Love him. Yeah, he's awesome.
The quote you said, and I thought it was in that video, but it's not. He said his advice is to just never speak ill of drugs.
Right. Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, hey, thank you for your time. I'll let you go.
It was fun.
Yeah. And I look forward to the next time. We have more to talk about. So
absolutely. Never ending.
Cool.
Limitless. Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye.